FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey! On April 15th, when you're all out.
Hello and welcome once again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
The FAIRtax Guys.
And we have got a special episode for you today on FAIRtax Power Radio. If you own or even work for a small business, you really need to pay close attention to this interview with Bob Mathews, a small business owner here in the local Florida area, talking about the experiences of businessmen under the current income tax system and what it would look like under the fair tax. So we got a fairly extensive interview for you today, so let's just dive right into it. Our interview today with Bob Mathews. And we are speaking today with Mr. Bob Mathews in Dunellen, Florida. Bob, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time today.
Well, it's my pleasure, Bob. I really appreciate it, and I think it's a very important subject, fair tax, and we got to do whatever we can to get it in.
Okay, well, the subject at hand today is going to be what life is like for a businessman, preferably a small businessman under the tax code, and so, of course, you are well qualified to talk about business. You've been owning and running businesses for the most part of your life. Just go ahead and touch a little bit on your career as a businessman and what you're up to these days.
Well, I'd be happy. First off, I must say that I'm probably the last guy in this room that should want the fair tax. I'm medically retired from the military, and I pay no taxes on my retirement, and if I didn't work at any other thing, I'd have no tax liability whatsoever. However, whenever I get involved with a company, and I've been in several, I find myself spending almost as much time trying to keep up with the taxes, avoid the taxes, pay the taxes, as I do running the business. In some cases, it's more than the time I spend running the business.
Okay, now a lot of people understand, of course, first thing I want to get into with you is, again, what life is like under the current tax code for the businessman. Now, most folks, when they think about how taxes affect businesses, they realize that they have to keep records, they have to fill out forms, they have to deal with withholding, calculating that from their employees' paychecks and getting all that done. I'm interested in what else is out there that might not be on a lot of people's radar that still takes time, effort, and resources away from your business, but you've got to do it to stay on the good side of the IRS.
Well, one of the companies that I operate, National Parachute Test Center, does a fair amount of retail and wholesale sales of parachute equipment. Most of this equipment is government surplus, so it's very difficult to calculate the cost of goods sold. It's easy to know how much you paid for the parachute, but by the time you crank in the shipping and all the documentation you had to do to get that sale through a government auction, keep track of all those prices to fairly come up with what your dollar value in that piece of equipment is compared to what you get back. We spend a lot of time on that, a lot of time. Another thing that's strange and it's recent is we do a lot of work with PayPal. We get paid by them. Many of our sales are international. So PayPal sends us a list of what they paid, but coordinating that with what was sold. And the really bad part is PayPal sends a W-2 to the government, giving them the total amount of money we got in, which now the government feels is our gross income. But we now have to take all those expenses out. And it's really a burden. I spend probably a full month of the year just trying to keep these things lined up.
Okay, in your experience, just a rough estimation, considering all the man hours that you and any of your employees and contractors put into running your business, how many of those man hours are spent dealing simply with tax issues as opposed to doing things that help your business and help your customers?
We've got to be anywhere from 15 to 20% of the hours we spend here between my wife and I, and that doesn't account the accountants, because in two of the businesses we do all the work, prepare the information, and then send it off to the accountant, who spends some time on it and then charges me $800 to file. So at the end of the day, I'm spending much more time than you really want to do on this, much more time.
Oh, mercy, I bet. You know, a lot of people think that the only thing the tax system costs you is the tax liability itself, but your compliance costs are through the roof, are they not?
Absolutely. We're spending, right now I've got a pile on my desk where we were in a commodity market for a while, and we purchased commodities, sold them and bought them and sold them. The end result was, after about 3 years, I pulled out of it. We lost some money. Not an awful lot, but we lost some money. Unbeknownst to me, this commodity company was sending every one of my sales, every time I sold a silver bar or a gold bar, to the federal government. But they never put down any of the purchases. So all of a sudden I end up with a $26,000 tax liability.
Wow.
Yes.
And you had no idea that was coming?
No, none whatsoever. So now I have to go back through all the records over the 5 years we were doing this and match up a purchase with a sale and figure out the taxes all over again for those years. And there, you can see on that desk over there, there's a stack of stuff that we've been going on whenever I get time. I can't do it all day, every day.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've all heard about that famous case several years ago where GE, huge international corporation, paid no taxes. There was a big hue and cry about that. Of course, what a lot of things you don't hear about is how much GE spent on accountants and lawyers to get there. But I understand that you're familiar with a similar case, albeit on a smaller scale, that didn't make the national news, concerning an airport in New Jersey. Tell us about that.
Yes, Bob. Back in the mid-'80s, I was a small investor with a couple of friends of mine in purchasing the Burlington County Airport in southern New Jersey. We redesignated it the South Jersey Regional Airport and got the federal government to declare it a reliever airport for Philadelphia, making it eligible for federal funds. It was a small 112-acre airport, and my partners up there started purchasing additional property with the help of the government around it, expanding areas, putting in retention ponds, just developing it so that the runway could be expanded and take the private flights out of Philadelphia and land them right at our airport, which is only 20 miles away, relieving Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
That was the whole purpose. And I had nothing to do with it, simply a silent investor, until my partner was killed in '99 in an airplane accident. And I went up there and I talked to his widow, and she said she'd sell the airport. And I thought that was wonderful. I waited to get my check for my investment, and she couldn't sell the airport. The town was all over her. The township was making it difficult. End result, I agreed to go up and run the airport, put the wheels back in the cart, and see if we couldn't get this thing in saleable condition. And I managed it for 4 years. We took in about $800,000 a year, a little more the last couple years. And, you know, that looks like pretty good revenue. But it was very expensive operating up there. Horrendous costs in New Jersey. Plus, we were plowing all this money back into the airport. And we were spending about $30,000 a year in accountants and lawyers to define for the federal government that this $800,000 that came in had no profit in it. We never took a dime to the bank. Nobody ever bought a beer off the money we made on that airport.
Wow.
It all went back into it. And fortunately, at the end of the 4 years, we did sell it to the state, and we got our money. And we're about to go home when we received a letter from the FAA asking us to send them a check for all the money. Because they invested in the airport, they felt the money was theirs.
Oh, mercy.
Well, we fought that with the help of a couple of representatives here, John Micah in Florida, and we put that to bed. Obviously, we'd owned the airport. The money was ours, and it wasn't a question. But to spend $120,000 over 4 years to tell the government we don't owe them anything, that's atrocious. There does not make any sense at all. It's hugely burdensome.
And that's all because of the way the current tax code is.
Absolutely, sir. It's just depreciation schedules. I mean, if we pour asphalt, it's 21 years. If you put up a building, it's 40 years. Everything has got a different scale. Everything is tracked differently. If you start something this month, you got to track it from this month till 20 years from now. If you did something 6 months ago, you're tracking that on a separate item. It's just the paperwork is enormous. I mean, our tax filings were literally 5 pounds of paper.
Mercy. And if another airport in another part of the country goes to their representatives and they are successfully lobby for a change in some of this, something that happens, thousands of miles away that could go into the tax code, you wouldn't even know about it, but it would still affect you.
Oh, yes. No, the tax code is Byzantine. There's, what are we at, 72,000 pages with, findings, and nobody can keep track of it, and the IRS doesn't know. I mean, they don't.
Yeah, I've seen something the other day that they were only going to be able to answer about half of the calls that they expect to get from people that are confused on their taxes. The call volume they expected was in the millions. It's just way too complicated. Now, getting away from these extreme cases like GE, and in your experience running and owning businesses, just typically ballpark figure, what percentage of your compliance costs, how do your compliance costs compare to your actual tax liability?
Well, I have one company, Aerobotics. It is developing a product for the government. We've been working on it for 6 years, and that 6 years we've not made a profit. But my compliance costs are about 2 to 3 weeks working on the paperwork every year, getting it to the accountant and paying the accountant. So, I'm saying we're probably spending $3,000 to $5,000 in just telling the government again that we don't make any money. So, on the other company I have, National Parachute Test Center, we have to track the used equipment that we sell, the foreign sales from U.S. sales, trying to develop costs of goods. Again, we spend another 2 or 3 weeks, maybe more, every year trying to pull this together in some form so that the government can see that this is what we made, this is what we pay taxes on. And quite frankly, we're spending at least as much on giving them the information as we are on giving them the money.
Now, the number I've heard floating around in general is that it costs a small business roughly 7 times as much in compliance costs as it is in actual tax liability. You think that's accurate?
Oh, very much. I would say so. It certainly 5 times, but 7's not unreasonable.
Okay. Now, another issue with the current tax code that the Joe man on the street is probably not aware of and doesn't think much about, but is of a huge importance to business people, is how that the current tax code puts U.S. businesses at a disadvantage in the world market. You mentioned a minute ago selling to a lot of international customers. What kind of problems do you get to in that regard, and how would it help your business if you were able to compete on a level playing field?
Well, we look at the fair tax as being the answer here. Right now, complying with cost of goods sales, what it cost me to buy the item in the first place, all the shipping, transportation, the fees that are charged by PayPal and other people, the actual physical shipping charges, those all fall into different categories under the IRS, and you got to track them all, and it's insane. If we just had a simple sales tax, if I sold it to you and charge you 23%, and that would be the end of it, and then I turn around and sell one overseas, I don't have to collect that sales tax when it goes overseas. So that gives me a great advantage.
Yeah, but under the current system, all the costs of the tax system that we've got now, all those compliance costs and that has to be embedded into the prices that you charge on the world market. And a lot of international companies, a lot of other nations reimburse their manufacturers for what they have their VAT tax over there. So their goods come to market without a tax component in the price. Yours come to market with a tax component in the price. How much of a problem is that?
Well, that is the problem. The first thing you're going to see is that if we could go to just a flat tax, fair tax, instead of its income tax that is spread over various components of the product, it would be much cheaper for me to sell it. It would be cheaper because I wouldn't spend so much time tracking things. Secondly, if it was sold internationally, I wouldn't have any taxes, so we would be much below the market value in the rest of the world. And it would make it so much easier. It would also be attractive to build more product. There's a couple of companies out there that produce product, one in South Africa, a couple of others doing most of their stuff in Sri Lanka, and some down in Central America where they build their parachutes, and they're much cheaper. And we can't build them up here. We just cannot compete with that market. But if we were able to take the embedded tax out, then we'd be much more attractive. And we would find more people coming to this country to build product because it would be less expensive than building it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. And you probably can't give me an exact answer here, but just estimate how much of a sales increase do you think your business would see if you were able to do that? If the fair tax were here and you did not have to charge more because you're dealing with this currently complex tax system?
It would be between 30%, maybe as high as 40% more. And then again, see, that's revenue that would come to the country because the sales tax that we would pay on these products, of course, revert to the federal government. And tracking sales tax is no problem. My wife says to me at the end of the quarter, what do we owe in sales tax? And I pull up and see how much I sold in Florida and how much I sold outside. I give her three numbers: gross sales, taxable sales, and 6% of taxable sales. It doesn't take me 15 minutes.
Yeah, and if you had a 40% increase in your business, you would obviously have to hire more people, more jobs for Americans. They would pay more taxes to the government. It's a win-win for everybody.
Oh, it is. I mean, we'd make an expansion on the airport system here. I want to put a classroom and another office on the other side of the hangar. You know, that's going to be about $100,000 to put in there. But right now in this economy, nobody's looking at spending $100,000 to improve business.
So even if you hire the most competent attorney and tax accountant in town, you could still get messed up by something that neither you nor he knows about.
Absolutely. Going back to the South Jersey Regional Airport, we had a great white shoe accountant firm out of Philadelphia, and I talked to him, you know, and I said, Melly, we're looking at FAIRtax. What's that going to do to your outfit? And he said, Bob, it's going to let me play a little more golf. He says, on the 8th floor, we have people up there that do nothing but study the tax code. They don't have clients. They simply study the tax code and feed the information back to the rest of us who do have clients. He says, and that goes on 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, all year long.
Yeah, and we've documented over the past 11 years, there have been thousands, literally thousands of changes to the tax code so that it averages out to be more than one per day for 11 years running.
Oh, yes. Nothing's going to end this. And Obamacare has just made it even more absurd. Fortunately, we take the position that we hire retired military here, and they all have their medical taken care of. But I don't know how somebody on the outside that's hiring civilians that's going to cope up with this present change in the law.
It's going to keep on going until we, the people, rise up and demand better.
Well, I think we need to. And I think we're starting to get a little groundswell. I've talked to a lot of other businessmen and folks here on the airport. I've never found anybody in business who's against this.
Okay, I say we've covered the problems with the current tax system. Let's start talking about the solution a bit. How long have you known about the FAIRtax, and what was your initial reaction to it?
Oh, it's been a long time. I guess I go back...
Well, it was hatched in the mid-'90s.
Yeah, I think I probably got it sometime before I sold the airport up there, which was about, we sold it in 2004, so I was probably around 2000, 2001 when I first heard about it here.
And your initial reaction was what?
Well, I listened to Bortz, and I got his book, and I read it, and I thought, where has this been? I mean, is it really true that a simple percentage of sales tax can handle everything the IRS has with all its myriad tax functions, not just payroll taxes, but, you know, inheritance tax and all the rest of the stuff that
Capital
the IRS...
gains taxes, yes. Alternative minimum tax, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I was just astounded that someone had come up with an idea that was that simple, that clean, and that easy to do. And again, as an individual, I don't pay taxes, but my businesses do, and I wanted to straighten it out, and I think it's going to be great for the country. It'll do more for this economy than anything else Congress could possibly do.
Amen. Now, it's not all that unusual when you see something that looks like a good idea at first, and then you do a little more research, a little more study into it, and you find some of the warts underneath the surface. Then there are other times when you get a hold of something, and the deeper you dig, the better it looks, which is the case with the FAIRtax for you personally.
Yes, I think that the biggest problem with FAIRtax is getting people to understand it. And we work at it. I mean, I appreciate your radio show, and I think you're doing a great job there. I know that Ron has been running this area here in Marion County. We've talked to folks from the other counties. I do what I can when we can get a group together and talk to them about it. And very seldom I ever run into anybody that says, no, that won't. I won't say they won't say it won't work because they don't think we can pass it. But I don't find anybody that says they don't like it.
Oh, I agree. Now, the FAIRtax was designed by business people with the major design parameter was just simply come up with the best tax system you possibly could that would raise the same amount of money for the government that the income tax does. Grade their performance. Did they hit it out of the park?
Well, it certainly looks like it. I mean, as I said, when I first read it, I couldn't believe that it would work that way. But having stuck with it now for 14 years, yes, it does make a difference, and it would be a tremendous improvement for this country. I mean, countries that are going to Mexico aren't going to Mexico because they don't like the water or the fact that labor's really cheap. Labor's not that cheap when you get down there compared to the fact, excuse me, that you have to hire more people because they don't have the same efficiency. But up here, we'll be bringing those businesses back if we pass the fair tax. People would want to come here because they could manufacture without having to track all these crazy costs, and then anything they export is not taxed at all. It's magic. Win-win.
Yeah, as you know, the fair tax is a consumption tax at the retail level. Retail consumers pay it at the cash register when they buy things. Now, as a business owner, you have had to collect and remit sales taxes. So you've dealt with both the income tax on the federal side and the sales tax on the state side. From a business owner's perspective, compare what it's like dealing with those two different entities.
Bob, that would be like comparing Wednesday to orange juice. As I said, my wife asked me at the end of the quarter, what do we have in sales tax? I look it up and give her three numbers and we're done. And it doesn't take 15 minutes from the time she asks it until it's in an envelope and mailed to the state. Actually, we don't mail it.
All those numbers are in your computer system. You just have to call them up.
Yes. Well, we look at sales in the state of Florida and gross sales. And, we don't have to worry about whether the cost of goods or transportation or any of that. We just look at gross sales and gross sales in Florida and gross sales out of the state. And that's the same thing we would do here, only there would just be plain gross sales. I don't have a problem telling you what I sold at the end of the month. Mm-hmm. But when it goes to the IRS, I have to tell you what I sold at the end of the month and what it cost me to sell it at the end of the month. And that's where it becomes really burdensome.
So if all you had to do was collect the fair tax the same way you collect the state sales tax, how much more time would that free up for you to devote to your business?
Oh, I get an extra month a year.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's incredible. Now, if the fair tax were law tomorrow, how would it impact you? What difference would it make?
Well, I'd probably take a little vacation and get out from underneath this pile of stolen identity with this $26,000 bill that I'm trying to sort out with the IRS. The biggest thing it would do is I could bring some people on board to work for me, because right now we try and use contract labor whenever we can. Mm-hmm. And I would see that sales are going to go up, my burden is going to go down, and I'd be happy to bring in some folks. And if that happened across the country, the economy would improve. And of course, much of the stuff that we do is government related, but we also do a lot of recreational. We teach some parachuting and we sell some recreational parachutes. And that industry is flat right now. And that would improve immensely if we were able to move the economy along.
What effect would it have on your prices, if any, if you had the fair tax versus the current income tax?
Oh, I'd say the prices would come down probably 15%, 10% across the board.
You immensely. You could hire people. You could expand.
We could bring on more folks. We could expand into a couple of different other pieces of equipment that we haven't sold because they're expensive and they don't move real quick. But that would help a lot.
Ballpark figure, how much do you think you could save on an annual basis if you didn't have to mess with this tax code?
Well, NPTC would probably save $12,000 or $15,000, almost the rent on this hangar. Mm. And
you multiply that over all of the small businesses in the country, and you've got a tremendous economic stimulus.
We're talking billions of dollars, absolutely. And it's twofold. It's not just that it's going to save me money. It's saving everybody money. Therefore, more people can get involved in commerce. Therefore, there'll be more sales. Mm-hmm. It's the old idea of cut the taxes and get more money, because when you cut the taxes, people spend more, and you end up with more tax money. In this case, we're going to cut it a bunch, and we're going to find an awful lot of increased sales out there, an much better economy than we have right now.
Okay, let's be fair and balanced here if we can. Is there anything that you know about the fair tax that would cause you a problem that you don't have today? I'm
Well, the
guessing
only
the
thing-
answer is no, but let's see.
Pretty close to no. The one question that we'd have to sort out is I buy surplus equipment from the military, and they tell me that fair tax is only on the first purchase of new equipment. So I don't know whether the military paid the tax on that or I'd be required to pay the tax on it when we purchase it. But that's a small problem, and it's isn't worth the time we spend discussing it. That would be easy to handle one way or the other.
So you foresee there may be some bumps and wrinkles in the implementation, but once it gets going, it's just vastly superior.
Absolutely. There's no question. It's a difference in driving through the mud or getting on a superhighway.
Okay, Bob Mathews from Dunellen, Florida. Thank you so much for your time today. Oh, and there you have it. Lots of good information from a businessman on the fair tax. We thank Bob Mathews for talking to us today. And Ron, you actually know him a bit better than I do, so you want to expand on this a little bit?
Well, Bob is our fair tax volunteer in the Dunellen area, which is outside of Ocala, where we live. And when something comes up in that area, he needs to do a presentation. He's actually been involved in it longer than my wife and I. So he's been a fair tax fan and a volunteer and a valuable member of our team for a long time. And he happens to be a businessman, too. I also want to make sure that we recognize Bob's service to his country. He was a Vietnam vet, and he was highly decorated, seriously wounded, and that's why he mentioned that he's on a medical discharge from the service. But anyways, notice what he said about his business. He's looking forward to the fair tax. The IRS is just impossible to keep up with. And when he compared dealing with the tax return now and dealing with what you would have to do as a businessman under the fair tax, as he said, it takes him 15 minutes to do his state sales tax. There's a couple of figures, you get them out of the computer, boom, you're done. You fill out the form, you send it in. You're all set. It's so much simpler, and for them, simpler means more business, all right, which means more jobs.
Yeah. Now, which means we have got, as fair tax volunteers, to get business people like him, got to get their ears, because their ears now on tax matters are dominated by the tax lawyers and their accountants and stuff like that have a vested interest in not seeing the fair tax come to play. So if you know anybody that owns a small business, that works for a small business, educate them on the fair tax, and just the merits of the issue will win them over in a heartbeat.
Yep, that's right. So, and one way that we can all get together and get this fair tax done is bigsolution.org. Bigsolution.org. This is the website where you, the listener, can get involved and help us get this thing passed. All right, FAIRtax.org is where you can get all the information. Anything you want to know about the fair tax, it's there. But bigsolution.org is where you can get involved. You click the connect button. That gets you in touch with the Americans for Fair Taxation. Support. You go there, you sign the petition. Contribute. Well, you know what that's for. And we really need, without being too crass about it, we really need your bucks too. And then build your voter tree, your voter database. That's where we're going to build it up to over 1 million people to impress Congress. So go to Big Solution.
Us here at FairTax Power Radio, the Fairtax Guys at gmail.com. We'll be glad to answer questions or comments you might have about it. And our Facebook page is another way you can get in touch with us.
Yep. And our Facebook page. And there's also FairTax Nation. And don't forget our FairTax logo store, FairtaxLogoStore.org. FairtaxLogoStore.org. That's where you can buy a hat or a shirt or some buttons or something like that.
And you got about 30 seconds to hit on the webinar.
Okay. Yes. Every month we have a webinar. The fourth Thursday of the month. You need to register for it by going to fairtax.org/webinar. And they always have a special topic. They go over the fair tax. They answer questions. It's interactive. So,
alrighty, that's going to wrap up this edition of FairTax Power Radio. Again, thanks to Bob Mathews for talking to us. Bob Paxton and Ron Malero, the FairTax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming. 'Cause